Hello, my name is Guy Morris, and I'm the founder of the Author Event Network. We're here tonight to interview one of our leading authors, Peter Stockwell, and I want to thank the Bremerton Kitsap Access television station for allowing us to use their studio and to come in. This has been very gracious. And the Author Event Network will be doing a lot of interviews with our authors, other artists, musicians, producers, and other creative people that will be showing to you and introducing you to throughout the year. But tonight we're going to be talking with one of our founding authors, Peter Stockwell, who's an amazing author of sci-fi, crime fiction, and motivational novels. Hello, Peter. How are you?
I am doing just fine. How have you been?
I'm doing great. Peter, you have, your titles include a number of different types of genres, from sci-fi to crime fiction and inspirational. What's your favorite and why?
I just enjoy writing. It's a lot of fun for me to create characters and plots and come up with new worlds, even if the worlds are the ones we live in. And so I don't have a favorite as much as I just favor the fact that creating this stuff is fun. It's enjoyable. It's something I can do in retirement, something that when I retired from teaching 12 years ago in 2010, I did not want to be a couch potato. I did not think that was my life or what it should be. And so I came up with a book. I had it in my head already, and I actually started writing the book before I retired and then finished it afterwards. And it's called Motive, and it took me about 3 years to actually finish the book itself and flesh it out so that it became the kind of book that I would hope people would read, and even went through three different covers in order to make sure it worked well. So that's what started it.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself and beyond the boredom of retirement, what inspired you to write?
This story that was in my head.
Okay.
And I had never really thought of myself as an author in the first place. I mean, as a teacher, I taught social studies mostly, but I also taught some language arts, and so I had writing in my background, and of course I had to take English classes, methods classes for how to teach. And then this one little nugget was sitting in my head, and not that it has anything to do with my family or my first marriage or anything, or does it? We always write about things that we know, and that's where it began. Now, I do want to say my ex-wife is still alive. Okay. Let's just put it that way.
So no criminal investigations pending?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
No, they don't need to be doing any criminal investigations.
Okay.
Although my detective does.
Your detective does. Yeah. Well, let's talk about your latest book a little bit, which is Android Dawn. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Android Dawn is the sequel to The Mistress. This is The Mistress, that pretty lady on the front of my cover. And that whole story is dealing with today's science. And I focused on 5 areas. The areas of stem cells, solar energy, computing technology, the chipping of the brain, and artificial intelligent beings and the development of that, which today in our science world, we are doing all of that. And I pushed it out 60 years just to see, all right, what would it look like in maybe 60 years? I was kind of doing Vern, what's his name? Vern.
Jules Verne.
Jules Verne, yes. Thank you very much. Jules Verne. I was kind of doing a Jules Verne thing in that he wrote about things in the future, and nobody ever thought, what? That doesn't make any sense. We can't do that. Fly to the moon? Are you kidding? We did it. And so I was thinking, all right, what happens if we have stem cells that we're using today to help fix body parts? Well, if they could actually develop the body parts. And then solar energy. What if it turned out that we could make a paint or a skin that we could put on almost anything for the purposes of having solar energy? Computing technology, we already know that we have ternary systems in the quantum mechanics area. If they take over the primary use of computing and we go from binary to ternary, the power behind a ternary system is great. We already chipped the brain. What if in the future we can use those chips not just simply to help people communicate or to be able to see or to communicate across their hemispheres of their brain or to help control things such as schizophrenia and oppositional defiance disorder or any of the other myriad psychiatric and psychological problems that we human beings have. What if we could actually take out your memory patterns and those memories and your thought patterns and put them into a ternary system, which then goes into those artificially intelligent developed beings that we can call androids or whatever we want to call them. And in the future, will we be able to tell the difference between a human and an android? That was my premise. And so then I came up with The Mistress. And once we got through with that particular book, we have to know what's the next step in the developments. Right. Android Dawn is about that next step, this fight between two brothers who have been the ones that are the main characters in The Mistress, fighting each other for control of android development. One wants to integrate, the other wants to subjugate. Not the androids, but the humans.
Now, do you carry, that's an interesting premise and a theme, do you carry any sort of current day themes in terms of politics or cultural issues? What are the main themes that are driving your characters forward, or is it just sort of differences in ambition and sibling rivalry?
Well, the sibling rivalry, of course, is there because of the political and sociological and psychological venues in which we live today. We human beings don't get along. Can you imagine what it's going to be like if we have to add in an entire new species of artificial intelligent beings, or maybe even hybrids? What if it is that we find out that we can produce hybrid human beings, part machine, part human? Will it happen?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's an interesting concept. I mean, you start to think about sci-fi issues like the Borg and other places where they've kind of taken that concept in a darker place. But you seem to have kind of given your androids a little bit more humanity than that, which I think is interesting. How do you go about the process of developing your characters, and particularly the characters for your androids?
Well, as I was thinking this through, I wanted to have characters that people could relate to. Characters that, when you were reading, as it says in my dedication in Android Dawn, that you wanted to have as friends. So how do you do that? How do you make a being that isn't really human, but acts so human you can't not want them as friends? And so that was the driving force there. At the same time, that brings in the conflicts that we have amongst us as human beings when we have different points of view, those of us who are conservative, those of us who are progressive, and we try to define what those are. What do we mean when we say we're conservative? What do we say when we want to be liberal or progressive? And the same thing could be said of androids who have developed, like Commander Data in Star Trek, who finally got a chip that had emotions, and he had to deal with it. He had to figure out what's going on in his head, in that computing system of his, when happiness and sadness, joy, anger, all of the various emotions that we humans go through are all of a sudden flooding his brain, and he had to work through. And for those of you who have seen that particular Star Trek series, Commander Data had a tough time with it. Well, what's going to happen if we have androids who have that ability for emotions?
That could be, given the power of androids and their intelligence and their ability to think faster than we do, that could be dangerous. It could be a little bit frightening.
Which then drives the story of the Android Dawn and the next book that I'm working about, which is called The Android Incursion, in which are they moving in and taking over? Well, you'll have to read the book, of course, to find out if they're going to take over. And then the fourth book, which is Zion, Zion is a character that we meet in Android Dawn, and the development of Zion into the, well, I'll just give you a little hint. He has to grow up first and become an adult.
Interesting. Interesting. So you're developing sort of adolescent Android technology, is what I'm hearing.
Well, that's what you may be hearing, but I would suggest maybe what I said earlier about hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
Can we, are we, and will we find out that we can develop hybrid humans, part machine, part human? And that's not a new concept in science fiction. That's a concept that's been around a long time.
Interesting. Well, tell me a little bit about your process and how do you do the research for, you're dealing with a number of different technologies and in your books. How do you do sort of the background, the research into some of that?
It's a crazy thing, but there are books out there that have information. National Geographic has a book about artificial intelligence that I've used. I have talked with particular friends of mine that are in the science fields, and we've engaged in communication about how it would look. I have done, I hate to say it, but I've done Google searches. It's amazing what we have done over the last 20 years to develop our research abilities. We don't have to go to the library and find books. It is instantaneous for us. And so I put it out there. I'll put the question out there on the internet and look for the answers that come back, and then see what's the viable part that I can use for stem cells or for solar energy or for computing technology. What was interesting about computing technology and using ternary systems, they're not new. They are very old. And when we're talking about computers, we can go back hundreds and thousands of years to computing technology. Now, it's not electronic in those days, but it's still there. It's still the development of helpmates in ancient Rome or ancient civilizations. It's there.
Right.
And
well, I think you might be referring to the Acanththeria device found outside of Greece.
yes, that was one of the things that was very interesting to find out, that we have these things in history, and we as humans have developed it. I put a quote into this book, and it's that everything is science fiction until somebody makes it science fact.
Yeah.
And that is so true, because I mean, we have cell phones today that when you and I grew up, the phone was attached to the wall. It had a wire on it, and everything went, we couldn't go any further, and we certainly couldn't take them with us. But today, those little phones really aren't phones.
Yeah.
The phone is one device that is on these mini computers that we carry with us. That's Dick Tracy without a watch.
It's moving quite quick. Well, actually, you can do
even
it in a watch.
Yeah. I know, even the watches today, we can do it with those. So, science fiction is, the future is written today.
Yeah. Well, what do you see? How do you actually market your books? You've got a number of different styles. As you've been an author for a number of years and across a number of books, I think you have like 10 books or so. How do you go about informing and engaging with readers and getting your books out there?
Well, the first thing I did was go to Barnes & Noble in Silverdale at the Kitsap Mall when I had Motivations out, and I set up book signings. And that was fun. I've also gone to quite a few writing conferences and where they have book events, and I've engaged in marketing to my fellow authors and getting their books and they getting my books. And then I found out that if I could get to farmers markets and pitch a tent and sit underneath there, I actually found that people coming out to buy their fruits and vegetables and such also would feed their mind as well as feed their body. Yeah. And so that was pretty good. We have an event here in Bremerton that is known as the Blackberry Festival. Some 20 to 25,000 people go through there. And so I bought a tent And I pitched one time, and I had some other authors that worked with me. I also set up at the Kitsap County Fair and had my tent up there on the grassy knoll that is up by the President's Hall, and put my books out there and sold books. And I've done that for a number of years. It's just simply getting in front of the public and saying, here I am, and these are my books, and if you're interested, and I sell them and sign books. And I do ask the people, have you ever had a book signed by an author? And they say, well, no, this is my first. And he says, yeah, well, let's not make it your last. And so then we expanded. I got involved with a group called Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers. And we expanded the Kitsap Fair and the Blackberry Festival to include multiple number of authors and multiple genres, so that when the public came by to take a look at books, they could find anything, basically anything that they wanted to find. And in terms of children's books or horror or science fiction, historical fiction, thrillers, murder investigations, crime, etc. And then I found out that we have hundreds of authors who just live in Kitsap County. I'm not talking dozens, hundreds. And it's amazing to me the number of people who are out there today that are writing books. And some are famous, you know. If I gave you the names, you'd say, oh yeah, I know that person. And they live on Bainbridge Island or in South Kitsap, up in Hansville, right here in Bremerton and Silverdale, and we're all over the place. And we're writing books, and they're available to the audience out there. So marketing is the bear.
It is the bear. One of the things I noticed in actually being at some of these events with you was the history or the relationships that you developed as a teacher. I've noticed way more occasions than I can recall or talk about where you'll ask somebody where they go to school. You'll talk about your time as a teacher. Sometimes you'll see parents there that you taught as when they were children, and they now are coming by with children of their own. And what I really thought was really compelling about that model that we used with AEN as well is the ability to go someplace year after year and build an audience of people saying, hey, I bought your book last year, let me buy your next one. Yeah. I enjoyed it. Or I know you, I know your kids, I was at the same school, and you're building that rapport with readers that you don't normally get with most authors, and which is a real benefit, I think, for people to be able to know that the author as a real person when they're reading their book. And I think that's your history in this area has just really been kind of an inspiration in that sense.
Well, one of the things, you live in one area, because I've been in Kitsap County for over 50 years, thanks to my dad. There's my dad. He was an Episcopal priest, and he came up to take St. Paul's Episcopal Church in East Bremerton, right at the east side of the Warren Avenue Bridge. And I've lived in the county ever since. You build an audience, even if you're not knowing that you're going to be building an audience. And when you talk to marketing people in today's world, with all the electronics that we have and all these media outlets that we have, publishers want to know if you have a following. You know, they're looking for that, wow, he's got 1 million followers, let's get a book out there. I don't have 1 million followers, but I have maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 that are following me on various media sites, and that builds an audience. Yeah. And so I feel like I am going to become that overnight success in about another 10 years. So, you know, it's the old adage. Yeah. You're an overnight success after 20 years. And I've known other authors that have gone through this process and have become those overnight successes. And I am not doing this to become an overnight success in 20 years. I'm doing it because it's fun. Yeah. And because this has to be a business, because we have to make sure that we can pay our bills for the making of books, these aren't free.
Yeah.
Yeah, they cost us as authors. If we're publishing our own works, which I am through my company, Westridge Art, it takes money. And we have to make sure that the money that we expend to create the books can be brought back into our pockets to pay for them. And that's the marketing.
And to produce the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to make sure that we have enough to produce the next one, which isn't going to be free either, because it costs money to get images and such. I create my own covers, and so I have to go out there and find the images that I want to use, and I have to pay for the rights for those images. And then you know, you have to buy the ISBNs, those international standard book numbers that we find, so that the libraries and the bookstores can find our books when they go to Ingram and or whatever other book distribution companies that are out there. But they're going to use those ISBNs. And those aren't free. They cost money. And of course, if you buy them one at a time, they're very expensive. If you buy them in bulk, they're a lot less expensive that way.
That's true. Well, Peter, a final question. Where would readers, other than the local events that you go to and the Seattle events that you're now going to as well, where would you readers go to find your books?
If they want to go online, they can go to the Amazon author page that I have. And my books are on Amazon. And that means that we not only have the physical copies that they can order, but they can also order the electronic copies with Kindle. Bookstores can order them. Libraries should buy them. I only say they should buy them because I have sent people to libraries when they say, well, I just check out books in the library. I said, well, go to the library and ask them to carry this book, or whatever it happens to be that they want to do. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I ask people to go find the books if they want them.
Well, Peter, we're almost out of time, but I'm going to ask you one last question. What would your advice be to other authors?
Sit down and write. Don't be afraid to put that first word out there, and do understand that when you're writing that first line, that first paragraph, that first page, that first chapter, you're on your way. Don't ever give up. Don't quit. If you really want to be a writer, do it. There are plenty of people out here that will be able to help you to get that book out into the marketplace. So.
And for you authors out there, if you're an accomplished or a published author and you're looking for opportunities to market your books and promote your books and engage with readers, I encourage you to look up Author Event Network on www.authoreventnetwork.com. And we're growing. Just opened a Portland chapter in addition to our Seattle chapter. We also do events here in the Kitsap County. And Peter's one of our earliest members, and we would look forward to including you and your books in your genre. Peter, thank you very much. It's been an interesting interview.
It's very much a pleasure to be with you and to work with you on the events that we work on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Guy Morris. I'm with Author Event Network. Our broadcast will be on Saturdays at 5 p.m. That'll be on Comcast Channel 3 or on Astound Channel 12. And I want to thank the Bremerton Kitsap Public Access Television for the privilege of being here. And I want to thank our author, Peter Stockwell, for joining us today. Thank you, and if you're a reader, please go out and read, buy some books.